Right, hello and welcome back to Between Two Fans. It is your boys, Stevie P and Danny Scholtz, and we're back to chat sport for the next sort of hour, and lots of sport to talk about. We had a very interesting weekend and another very big weekend coming up this weekend. Coming up on the show, we're going to be talking quite a lot. We've got... a lot of rugby talk about. We're going to talk about John Plumtree potentially getting the sack at the Sharks. We're talking about England versus Ireland. We'll be talking about the title decider for the Premier League. We're going to be talking about the potential worst ever player to play 100 tests. So, Scholtzy, big show ahead of us. How are you doing?
Very, very good, Stevie. Was in bed late last night. I was watching AFC Wimbledon versus Grimsby Town, an absolute thriller of a 0-0 draw in the dead of the night, and a couple of beers afterwards. So, but we're up early. We're podding on a Wednesday morning, so cannot complain. And a lot has happened, and a lot of sport to come up. Shall we get into our predictions from last week and how we fared?
Yeah, correct. Because I took a 3-2 lead last week, so I want to see if I'm building on that lead or if we're back to all square here. It's a big moment in the pod, yeah.
It is a big moment. So yeah, for those new around here, every week we make 3 predictions on a football, rugby, and cricket game that is happening this week, and the winner of each week gets a point. Stevie is currently leading me 3 points to 2. Last week we predicted on the Manchester Derby, the 4-day CSA 4-day Cup final, and the URC game of the Bulls versus the Stormers. Stevie, Manchester Derby. So in score, well, what looked like was going to be a potentially United holding on and doing my boys a favor against United, but against City. But alas, City winning that game 3-1. Stevie, you predicted 2-1. I predicted 3-0. So technically, we both 1 goal off. I'm not sure what the rules are on this setting. Let's get to the bottom of predictions and we can come back to it if need be. It might be our first ever draw. Then we go on to the 4-day Cup final. We both predicted Lions to lose, given their horrible start. To be fair, in both innings, they were 5 wickets down before 100 runs. And then Delano Purchita just absolutely decided that this was his final and went on to score 230 runs between the innings, an 80 and 150 not out. What an absolute insane knock. Also, shout out to Chepo Moreki for getting there's nothing better as a fan than watching your night watchman get runs on the next day, and he went on to get 50, which allowed the Lions to win by 99 runs. Stevie, you predicted a 4-wicket loss, and I predicted an 8-wicket loss. So you're closer, and neither of us were correct by any means.
No. I bet my boys to fare a bit better.
A bit. Yeah, a bit. 100 runs compared to 4 wickets. But yeah, so that's your point. And then we go against the Bulls versus Stormers and Jeepers, where we off. Maybe it wasn't quite our week, but I went for the game ended. Was it 40 points to 21?
22, I think.
Yeah, 40 points to 22 to the Bulls, and very, very dominant showing. The first time they beat the Stormers would have been 8 in a row, but now it's as they're calling it, a 7-1 split. And so that was Bulls by 18. Stevie, you said Bulls by 5. I said Stormers by 2. So again, way off it, but you are the closer of the two, so we don't need to go back to that Manchester Derby tie because you've taken another point. 4-2 lead.
You want to see my tips? Just follow me on Twitter. I'm basically a punter these days.
Yeah, I hear so, bro. I'm learning at the coalface here. Unfortunately, it's not pretty.
Yeah, no, well, big one this weekend. To be fair, I'm not quite sure what where to go this weekend. So I think this weekend will
Yeah,
be a bit of a decider.
yeah. So this weekend we're going to be making predictions on Manchester City versus Liverpool. In the Premier League, we've got England versus Ireland in the Six Nations, and New Zealand versus Australia in the Test matches. So stick around to the end to listen to that. But Stevie, let's chat about the rugby last weekend, bro. You must
Yeah,
be
no,
one happy Lions fan.
yeah, no. I mean, it was as I was saying. I mean, as I said when I watched along, after being abused by the Sharks social media team throughout the
Yeah,
entire
they
week.
deserved that. They
No, they
deserved
did. They
every
did.
bit of that.
Mm.
They were so up in your grill. They were,
Yeah,
it
sending
was
shirts.
spiteful. It was
No, it was
spiteful.
spiteful, but you can't be sending shirts to these guys the week of. I mean, you
Yeah,
just announced it this week.
it's
You could have announced it this week.
yeah, Hendrickse being named in the 23. An hour later, a shirt reveal.
Yeah.
It's like,
How's it, guys? Like, I'm so excited to come and join the Sharks. And same with Emmanuel Tuca, busy posting videos of like the feeling when your brother joins you down at the Sharks. Even
yeah.
the match day graphics. Friday it was like one day till match day with Vintage Tuca. On the actual day, it was like match day with a Piwa Gianti. They used every single former Lions player in the social media, only for them to come up to the park and get decimated 40 points to 10. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
It was to be fair, there was a point where I thought the Sharks were getting back into the game after their only try from Keita. To be fair, that was like 30 minutes in, but largely it was just a bit of a whitewash, wasn't it? I mean, the Sanel and Humber pulling strings, you can do it from scrum off as well as it seems, and Kewan Horn playing well, like just a proper effort on the lines at home. Seems to be building a bit of a slowly building a fortress there as well. I think
we used to,
all South
we're
African
back,
teams really, bar the Sharks, have been are really tough to beat when they're on their
at
home
home.
turf.
Yeah, I mean,
which is a good thing.
That's been the biggest issue for the Lions the last few years, the fact that we're actually not been particularly good at home. And I think this season we're slowly starting to get back to that sort of fortress Ellis, which is what we had back in that Super Rugby run we had, where you didn't come to Ellis Park and get an easy game. So I think the biggest difference is that the Lions are getting better at home, and then they've been competitive away. And interesting, Jordan Hendrickse gave an interview this morning and said that his goal is to leave the Lions with silverware. He said apparently the goal of the squad is to get to the playoffs for the URC, and they reckon they can go all the way. So I love the ambition.
I mean,
but we'll see how it plays out.
I don't know. Given that a playoff means that you'll probably have to win 3 away games to win the URC is ambitious, but as they say, ambition is priceless. Let's get on to Bulls Stormers then. I mean, first of all, how good is that? Those fans sticking through
terrible weather.
Yeah, terrible lightning, thunder showers. It's all coming down. But they just drank a couple more brandies. I saw there were a couple of speakers before the game had even started. I think people were getting a bit restless.
After it eventually started an hour later.
Yeah, but a phenomenal game.
It was just, for me, it was interesting because I think the Stormers who have had moments this season where they've been the Stormers that we've seen the last few years, and they've had moments where they've really not been, and they have really been off. And I think this game showed the difference between the Bulls and the Stormers this season, where I think the Bulls have taken so many steps forward. I think that Jake White's learned to trust more of a squad, and I think the squad's got more buy-in because I think he trusts more players, and players who are often on the fringes are now happy to step up and believe that they can be backed. And I think the Stormers are maybe, I don't know if it's fatigue or a bit of sort of a hangover from the first sort of couple of years, but they're just not able to elevate themselves to the same sort of levels of the last few years. Yes, they have lost a few players, but you look at the Stormers side on Saturday, and it was quality Stormers side, but just couldn't really get into the game. A couple of silly errors. I think the pack just didn't really pitch up, and just not getting the best out of what's an incredibly talented backline. But I thought the Bulls also tactically, for the first time against the Stormers, got it very right.
Yeah, I mean, as a Stormers fan, I'm going to say about time, eight times trying. But I agree. I think their forward pack dominated us. I think they were so strong. But also, there does seem to be a lot more depth now at the Bulls. There's so many there's rotation every week, and it doesn't seem like they get that much weaker, which is what you want to see when it's your club. Yeah, I did feel there was a point where the Storms were not getting anything in that direction. Just almost like that little grubber through with Kane and Moody scoring.
Yeah.
That thing was destined to go out. And then, I mean, there's a reason that the rugby ball is bloody oval. And, I learned about that on Saturday because it just snuck in. And then there was that potential counter-attack. I thought we were potentially going to close in on the game, only for then Ambrose Papier to capitalize on a knock-on. I don't think our outside backs, to be fair, had the best match. But for the most part, you have to give a lot of credit to the Bulls because they're looking like a very strong outfit. And they, as much as the Lions kind of are now wanting to apparently win the URC, I think the Bulls have a really strong chance of doing it.
Well, I think they're the clear favourites alongside Leinster.
Yeah, Leinster's still sitting in one. Will have the home final. It's just whether they turn up in the semi-final, which will be the question. I think all Bulls fans will be hoping that they're up against Munster again, so then they can get that home final. I mean, home URC final at Loftus will be pretty electric.
Yeah. No, look, I think that's also it's a big shot. I think even just in general, the fans are back in stadiums. Even at Ellis, we've seen bigger crowds. It always looks very empty at Ellis Park because it's just such a behemoth of a stadium. The fans that do go are always on the west side, and they absolutely pack the west side before they even think about the East Bank, because Lions tend to obviously, for some reason, always get the afternoon games, and you don't want to send the East Bank in the sun.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
You could have 10, 15,000 people on the West Bank itself. It's always difficult to gauge exactly how many people are there, but the attendance is up. So it's just really good to see that the South African fans, after the bit of the rugby hangover and stuff in the last few years, they're back in the stadiums. We're now. I mean, if we had, for the fact that Loftus sold out and you think about it, I think the official number for the day was 50,000 and something. So 50,000 fans, you think about those overseas stadiums, those that hold 10, 15,000 seaters, and all of our unions would sell that out every single week with ease, even for the smaller games, let alone the derbies. And that's where we want to be. You want to be in a situation where we know every weekend there's going to be fans in the stadium, and it'll be interesting now when we move away from the SA derbies and we start bringing in other teams. What sort of the crowds will do, but hopefully the sort of period of SA derbies, getting full stadiums and people enjoying that atmosphere, hopefully it kind of ignites just a better attendance moving forward.
Yeah, I think they'll for like the Zebras, you're not going to see 50,000. But maybe for those games, you're at least seeing 25,000. That's still a hell of a lot of people.
Even 10, 15,000, is a decent number of people in there.
No, it's decent turnout. I think, as you say, like people are galvanized, and the build-up to a South African derby is always special. It feels like it's become special again. I felt like I got drained out during that COVID period, during the 20 Currie Cups within a year long. Or within 12 months, just because we were just playing each other the whole time. It was just like, I've watched this match so many times, but now there's a lot of skin in the game, and even just history of the URC between two teams like the Bulls and Stormers. There's a final won and lost between those two, and one that's won the whole thing and one that hasn't. So it's just there's good competition, and it makes for a good product that the people are enjoying.
Now, speaking of the competition and those who have been absolutely dreadful in this competition, the big question we need to answer today, Dan, is John Plumtree at risk of losing his job?
I think he has to be. Like, I was shocked when I saw that the Sharks released the statement. I was just looking for, like, I was just skimming it to see where it was that they announced that Plumtree had been sacked. They just said they were, quote unquote, in the mud, which is a bit of an understatement. But like, when you're bringing the likes, like the players that they have, when you look at their team, like the sheer amount of Springboks and international caps is a joke. They are on paper like the best team in South Africa, you'd say. But the reality is just so far from that. Just can't get it to click. I don't know if it's a motivation thing, whether their Springboks aren't that interested in playing for the Sharks. They're kind of largely a money move essentially, but you can still play in South Africa. I don't know if it's do you even think we can call the Springboks motivation into question if they're playing for the Sharks?
Yeah, it's such an interesting one, and it's interesting to see how many Sharks fans are suddenly so against the idea of having Springboks in their squad. They're saying they don't want these Boks who just come there and don't really care and stuff like that, and they're never really available and stuff. And I hear that, but I just look at some of the other players who aren't even Springboks, current Springboks at the moment, and how many of those players are, as you said, internationally capped. I mean, you got your Instuko Gunus and Kuni Oostes, who are your reserve prop, both capped for the Springboks. You've got your Cohen Bosch, yes, not massive, exactly, illustrious international career, but he's played at that level. Francois Fentes has played at that level. Apple Lefasti has been in and out of box squads recently. You've got a Piwe Dianti who will break through player of the year. Yes, we know it's going to take him a while to get back to his best, but there's so many players. Vincent Tuka was the Lions' best player and one of the URC best players over the past few years. So even aside from just your current World Cup winners, there's
your fringe
it's a better side than the Lions. It's a better side than the Lions. So to get hammered 40 points to 10, the Lions have done the double over them. Sinea Nahamba has done the double over the Sharks this season. That was somebody that they decided was
phenomenal redemption arc. It's such
he kicked the winning points in Durban, scored a try in Joburg. And he was someone that they decided wasn't needed at the union. And look what he's managed to do. Marius Lowe, for example, they're going to sign Andre Estes, and I think it's the third or fourth center they're going to sign to replace him. Whilst Marius Lowe's gone on to have one of the best seasons of his career at the Lions. So it's and Pilo Gamedi back in the alignment camp. We've spoken about this before. The player management of that union has been so bad. So it's an interesting one because I think that's probably what's almost protecting John Plumtree is the fact that you can look at the season and say, well, the results aren't there, but you can sit there and think, but this seems to be a systematic issue, where it's not just, even before Plumtree, the results weren't there. They didn't qualify for the Champions Cup last season. So it's been this downward trajectory. And, is it Neil Powell that's the issue? Is it just the general union? They've got all these massive plans, and everybody talks about how they've got these great plans, and the owners got, they say all the right things, and they've got these programs, and they've now formalized their, that the Eastern Cape is their official based academy, and they've got this working agreement with the Pumas now, and they've got all these various structures in place, and it's just producing nothing on the field.
Yeah, just kind of waiting for this ship to turn around. I feel like they haven't been really anywhere near the heights that they were at the end of Super Rugby in probably 2019.
Even that COVID year, the year before, they were absolutely flying in that Super Rugby.
Yeah, no, they were like an incredibly strong franchise, winning Currie Cups, always kind of top one or two. Within South Africa, never been an easy team to beat. Always has produced Springboks as well, not just necessarily bought in Springboks. Yeah, it's interesting. We haven't really seen this type of model play out within the South African rugby space, where there is so much more money from within than the rest of the franchises. It's not bearing fruit yet. If it does, I think people will also be pissed off, to be fair, if all of a sudden they just start bullying everyone. But if anything, it's you have to just, I think, bring into question the coaching. That is, there are only so many things that can't be going right. And if they're still persisting with Springboks, they're clearly not going to change that approach. So it needs to be, then you kind of end up looking at the coaching staff. So I think if I was a Sharks fan, I'd kind of call for the sack, Plumtree, but it's not my decision to make.
Yeah, look, a lot of Sharks fans do have. I put up my review yesterday from the URC, and I think 90% of the comments were all saying that Plumtree needs to go. So, interesting times for him. I think if it comes down to the Challenge Cup, I think if they can pull together a reasonable Challenge Cup campaign, then I think he can survive. But the issue is, it's all very well saying, he needs to sack, but then you got to go and say, right, well, who replaces him?
Yeah.
And that's
they have money. They spend money. You can probably get even an international coach in there.
Yeah, well, there we go. Maybe you can go and and find a big name coach instead of just it's not like he's not a small name coach, but anyway, we've got Six Nations back this weekend. You were complaining last week they were back to a break, but we're now into the Six Nations, the final 2 weeks. So this is the penultimate weekend, and some very interesting games. Italy off their draw against France, up against Scotland, who are praying that England can do them a favour and give them a chance of going to the Aviva Stadium next weekend and playing for the Six Nations title. England versus Ireland. England have been completely written off. Very interesting. There's now leaks in the media. Felix Jones apparently not particularly popular. Nobody liking the defensive issues there. So we'll talk a little bit about him. And
I realized Felix was grouped in on those comments. I thought it was just old Stevie Borthwick.
Well, so there's no official sort of comments about Felix Jones, but just a lot of them complaining about the defensive system and the way that they're currently playing and the work they're doing on the defense. And so it doesn't take a rocket scientist to then say, well, look who the defense coach is. So look, we're all saying South Africans, listen, Felix, we're here. We've got you. If they don't like you,
Rebound.
We'll give you citizenship. We'll adopt you as one of our own. You can vote. We'll give you a nice house or something. We'll sort you out.
I mean, to be fair, we've probably done all of those things already. It's just come back stronger, go
exactly.
to the other side.
We'll have the brand new nice.
Yeah, it's a big ship to turn around. I think there's been some debate about what England needs to do to actually get a result out of Ireland, and is it knuckle down, play that defensive game, lots of picking, like almost a purely like South Africa, like the game that they played against South Africa in the World Cup semi-final, and then just try kind of make it ugly, or are Ireland actually far too good for that? And the only way you can beat Ireland, and the only way they have been beaten, is by trying to get the ball out wide and just trying as much as possible to slow down that ruck speed, but beating them on the fringes.
You've got to. I think that ruck speed is so important. You've got to compete in the breakdown. You've got to make sure they don't have that clean ball, because they will wear you down so quickly if they've got that ruck speed.
If Jamie Gibson Park can get the ball in under 2 seconds every single time, you're not going to win a rugby game against Ireland. He's got too many options in the bag, in and around him, and just himself to select from. That your defensive line, particularly a new one, and a new defensive system, and that England are trying to adopt under Felix Jones, it's not going to fly, and they'll just be picked off. I mean, Ireland are scoring 30 points against any opposition for fun, so this means that England need to score 30 as well, and I don't know if they're going to be kicking those 30 points.
Yeah, no, I think it's for England. I don't think there's much to lose. I'd be very interested to see what kind of team they go with. For example, are they going to go with a powerful team? Are they going to go for a fitter, quicker team, sort of mobile, to try and sort of just cope with the relentless Ireland attack? Do they try and starve Ireland of possession? Do they understand? Do they just sort of identify the fact that they might not be able to? So I think tactically, it's going to be very interesting to see what Steve Borthwick and the coaches can produce. Look, the fact of the matter is that at the moment, Ireland are being called the best team in the world, best team ever, for example, maybe the best Six Nations team ever. England have been completely written off. So there's a certain amount of comparisons to the World Cup, semi-final build-up before England went and put in a big performance. So, the stage is set for that potential upset. It's just whether the England players can get up and have the best game that they've had in a while, and hope that Ireland are kind of just off their game, which they just don't seem to be. But Ireland looked completely untouchable during the World Cup until they're knocked out in the quarterfinals. So
last time when England had their backs against the wall, think about even just that Argentina game, red card within the first 2 minutes. That's kind of when they came out swinging, and that's when they started turning a campaign around. So I don't think, predicting England to win is a bit of a wild shout. But they feel like they do have the ability to bring one out, because the reality is they have the players, right? Like people, and it's starting to piss me off. Everyone's saying it's such a new team. It's not that new. They haven't had that many people leave. Like Courtney Laws has left, and Owen Farrell has left. Other than that, you have everyone else at your disposal. They are choosing. It's not like everyone's gone and retired. And Will Young, but Will Youngs was barely making the starting 23
and the Vinopolas as well.
The Vinopolas, but again, this is that they were already kind of by choice, like not selecting them, you know.
Yeah.
So you really have your own team. Borthwick has chosen to go with this approach, and he's trying to an extent, I think he's trying to hide behind the fact that like he's picked a young team, but that's the team that you have picked. You know, that's what you are committing by. So I don't.
Well, look at the Italian team. They're not much older.
Exactly.
The Italian team that drew and should have beaten France.
Should have. But I think Steve will go to be honest, I think he'll go defensive because I think he won't risk a big blowout loss if he goes attacking, because I think that's going to be his head on the chopping block. I think he needs to get it, another win against like a big opposition soon. Otherwise, England fans aren't sticking around for them just to beat Wales and Italy, and maybe France. I mean, that's going to be a big final week. But we've also got some Scotland versus Italy. Can we see the Italians rising to the occasion again? Are Scotland too big? In theory, a team that almost beat France, and France, also controversially beat Scotland. So in theory, it should be a very close one.
In theory, look, I did kind of write off Italy, which I don't often do against France, and what a performance they put in. It's difficult once again. I think this will be an interesting barometer to sort of note where Italy is in comparison to Scotland, who are trying to fight for the Six Nations. I think should have beaten France and beat England quite comfortably. Somebody the other day on the group said that they didn't think Scotland were particularly good against England. I thought Scotland were very comfortable in that second half. They didn't get out second gear, didn't need to. So look, I think Italy can compete. We're at home as well, which will help. But I think Scotland again, and that's what I keep saying, if they want to be considered a top side, these are the games they need to go in and win comfortably.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it has to be a massive scoreline, but it means you need to go in and you need to control things. You need to basically just never be under pressure.
Yeah.
As soon as they sort of threaten to come back, you need to be able to win that penalty, win a scrum, for example, find a good kick, and just be able to control the game. So I think for me, I think that Scotland should get over the line. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with this Wales versus France game.
I think that one's also going to be massive. There's nothing that says Wales can't do it, and this is actually a very young Welsh side.
Yes.
Very few caps versus supposedly the team that should have won, the World Cup last year, who've now absolutely fallen off a cliff, missing, that, classic 9-10 combo of Ntamak and DuPont so much, and there seems to be a bit of unrest at the camp. They've just got their tails between their legs.
Oh, there was talks about Galtier being up for the sack.
Literally.
Imagine that a year ago.
Yeah. Literally could not. Like, Springboks have gone in and absolutely destroyed that rugby federation. But what's nice is we're speaking about all of these games. Probably the least competitive game might even be England-Ireland, which you'd typically associate with the most competitive game. So, we'll see if Wales steps up. They've shown signs. They're yet to win. It's probably going to be the classic wooden spoon game with them in Italy next week. But they've been so many almost shocks this Six Nations. There just needs to be one big one, right? That just wasn't yet to come. It was going to be that Scotland one. It was going to be
Italy.
We've been
waiting for that one upset, that one big upset, proper upset.
Yes. And to be fair, we're speaking about all of these games like there's a scenario that both teams could win. So, maybe that's this week. I would absolutely love for England to beat Ireland to set up a showdown at the Aviva next week for Scotland versus Ireland. I think that'll just be such a good final way to go out. And, it would mean that then Ireland don't win their back-to-back Grand Slams, but to go down to the final day is always epic.
Yeah, I think that's what we all want as fans. I mean, the Six Nations is always such a great competition, and I think it's been a really good Six Nations campaign. I do think we've been robbed of what could have been one of the best Six Nations in a long time with that Scotland versus France result. But the Italy Scotland, the Italy France results. That's a huge result. The Scotland beating England once again for the fourth time in a row in that Calcutta Cup, for example. Ireland blowing away France, starting this sort of downfall. There's been a lot of narratives to this. The Six Nations, a Welsh side which has literally had to press the reset button, Warren Gatland doing what Warren Gatland does, and that is make a team competitive despite what he has, despite the experience he has. He can just set up a team to be difficult to beat all the time. So there's been a lot of little subplots, but I'm just waiting for that. I'm hoping this weekend, we go and see Scotland masterclass against Italy. We go and see like Wales upsetting France, and we see England finding a victory against Ireland. It completely blows up the entire sort of Six Nations last weekend, where suddenly the wooden spoon might not be that straightforward. For example, Italy, for example, they're currently sitting on 3 points. So if Wales get a win, for example, then Italy will be playing against Wales to potentially, if France then go down, all of a sudden France could be playing next week with an opportunity for them to potentially be the wooden spoon. How wild would that be?
Cheapers.
With England playing against France in that last weekend. So if we can get those results, I want a Scotland win, I want a Wales win, and I want an England win. But that Wales win means that France must not get any points, whilst I'd like to see Italy get like at least 1 or 2 bonus points. Because if Italy go into that final weekend 1 or 2 points behind France against England, it just we don't want to be in a weekend where the only thing to play for is that Ireland-Scotland game. And unfortunately, if we get an Ireland big win this weekend, they win the Six Nations.
But I think if England, remember how Rusty mentioned All Blacks away. If you win that game, you buy yourself a lot of time going forward, because that's the hardest game to win, right? I think that's exactly what Borthwick needs to and should be doing with this.
Well, you go and beat one of the best sides of all time, and suddenly people say, "Cool, we'll back you."
And it largely, when we beat the All Blacks away, it was a flash in the pan. Like, we weren't winning consistently around that. We were losing to Australia frequently. I think we even lost to Argentina in and around then. It wasn't a completely convincing time, but we saw the signs in the big games and what we were capable of. We saw, what our ceiling could be, and that's what Borthwick needs to do. He needs to give the England fan base a sign of what this team's ceiling could be. And there's no better stage to do it than versus the best team in the world at the moment. So very, very exciting. But Stevie, let's get on to a little bit of football. We had some first of all, we had some Champions League last night. Bayern coming back from a goal down versus Lazio in the second leg, going on to win 3-0, and who are now through to the quarters, as well as PSG winning 2-1 versus Real Sociedad, aggregate 4-1. Kylian Mbappe, 2 goals, doing what he does best. We'll see if PSG can actually make a run in the Champions League. Will be a pretty insane way for Kylian Mbappe to bow out. But let's get on to the Premier League. Manchester Derby, I thought your boys could hold on at half-time. I was praying.
Johnny Evans playing centre back. We've got makeshift strikers, makeshift left backs. We've got an 18-year-old guy anchoring our midfield. Yeah. Where did you guys think we were ever going to compete? Just because Marcus Rashford pulls out a Marcus Rashford wonder goal.
Yeah, I needed one more from him. I mean, it's become so expected, these comebacks from City. Like, as a Liverpool fan,
we scored far too early.
You scored too early. Yeah, you needed that needed. If that came in the second half, maybe you could have played, because actually when City go behind early, they tend to be fine. It's when it's goalless for a long time, or if they go behind late. Is when they're really at risk. But unfortunately, your boys could not pull through. So City, Liverpool, and Arsenal are all 1 point or within 2 points of each other. Arsenal scoring goals galore. Stevie, another 6-0 win. But granted, versus Sheffield, who are really horrible. and are looking like they can do nothing but go down to the championship next season.
Yeah, correct.
Do you think that them, they've had the most insane February and now continued March in such fashion? They have Brentford this weekend, probably a game that they will win. Do you think there's any part that this could not benefit them from the perspective of that they aren't having to win grudge matches? I mean, you're never going to complain about, blowout wins. Like, you cannot. However, you're seeing Liverpool and City have to win the hard way. And if they are in trouble on the, with 3 games to go, they've been there before, whereas Arsenal haven't had to. Could that be something that derails them when they do have the games versus, for example, Chelsea coming up, which will be quite a grudge match?
Well, I think that's what's going to make them champions or not at the end of the day. You've got to be able to show that you can win those really, really tough matches. Those when the chips are down, who rises up? And I think that they've breezed through. They've been completely dominant. Nobody's arguing that. They still remain 2 points behind Liverpool. But obviously, this weekend's a massive weekend. City win, for example, they go ahead of Liverpool and make the title race even closer, whilst Arsenal can kind of continue doing their thing. Arsenal have got an interesting time coming up because they've got a big Champions League tie next week at Tuesday. It's home against Porto. They're 1-0 down, for example.
They're getting stretched now for the first time in a couple of years, actually, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't know what that result does for them. If they go through, I think that gives them obviously a lot of confidence, but you have to start playing more games. Crashing out of the Champions League, I think the fans will put a positive spin on it and say, well, that means we can focus on winning the Premier League. But I think that would be a big moment for them to have all these 6-0s, these incredibly dominant performances. If they, for example, get knocked out of the Champions League, then all of a sudden that bottlers tag comes up and you're sitting there going, well, what's the point of doing all these things where as soon as you get to an important game, you've dropped it. So they've got City on the 31st of March. And obviously that is the big game as well.
Yeah.
They now need to do it against the big sides. They've got a horrible run in. They've still got Spurs. They've still got United, which, United, who knows which United pitches at, but they've still got Villa coming up. They've still got City. They've got Chelsea and they've got Brighton. So whilst I'm not saying that those teams are the best, they're not playing, they're not going into the final stage of the season playing the bottom 5 teams.
Yeah.
They're playing mid-table clubs. I think they've got Wolves as well. They do. I mean, literally, these are their fixtures here. So they've got Chelsea, City, Luton, Brighton, Villa, Wolves, Spurs, Bournemouth, Everton, United.
Yeah, the final 3 run is not too bad, but the next, the next 8 are going to be could be where it's won and lost for them. But I do think they are sitting just in the wings, like almost in the slipstream there in third.
I think that's helping them. The fact that they're not in the top of the league, they're not the target. They're kind of just just doing. Because let's be honest, yes, they're scoring all these goals, but nobody's talking about them.
Still, they know people are acknowledging them. But even when they beat Liverpool, which was massive, I mean, first thing you have to do if you want to win the Premier League is take points off your biggest rivals, and they only gave Liverpool 1 point both games of the season, which for Liverpool's sake, I think is a massive, massive loss. But they went through a bit of a rough patch in Jan, and everyone kind of wrote them off. And I was like, okay, well, it's kind of Arsenal have done it again. It's just happened a little bit earlier this season. But I think that, as you said, where they're sitting right now is exactly where they want to be. I did speak of a pretty incredible Feb. Granted, they did lose their one massive game in the Champions League. It was away, so they'll be at home in the reverse tie. But yeah, I think personally, I still think they have to go for that Champions League. I think confidence-wise, that'll I think lift them more than this. As much as they will then be stretched for a thin squad. But we do have this Sunday, Manchester City versus Liverpool. And those are obviously the 2 other title contenders. So, Stevie, as they call it, a 6-point game. Is this the title decider, potentially? I mean, it's always such a good game. For years gone by, it's been insane. But I can't remember a game that it was this late in the season when both were contending.
Mm.
Both seen usually it's more in the beginning and middle. what do you see happening in this game, and what are the repercussions of it? What's a good result for both of these teams?
Well, I think if Liverpool win it, obviously they lead to lose.
Yeah,
It's
agreed.
because you take a 4-point lead. On you take so you can go up to 66 points. So you have 4 points on City.
Yeah.
And Arsenal, you're currently 2 points ahead, and you can maintain that. So I think it becomes your league to lose. If City win it, I think it throws the league into it, and it'll be quite a cool one for them to win in terms of like suddenly keeping that league really close.
Why is that a cool one for City to win, bro?
If you're neutral, I don't care. I'm not invested in the title race right now. City. No, I'm not saying that this. I'm not saying that the title. I'm saying the result. This weekend they win. They go to 65 points. They'll be 1 point ahead of Arsenal, 2 points ahead of Liverpool. That means we're going into like the final month and a bit of football in the Premier League with the top three separated by 2 points.
Yeah, I do think. I think if City win, they win the league, and I think if Liverpool win, they win the league. I think. And a draw is great for Arsenal. That's actually probably exactly what they want, right? Because that could actually that could take them first. No, there would be town points at Liverpool. I think my question to you maybe is: would both teams take a draw?
Yeah, probably. We all know that City. Look, maybe they do, but City don't generally choke. Pep Guardiola doesn't choke.
Away though, at Anfield. I don't think Pep.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I don't think he'd mind. I don't think he'd mind a draw, because I think he would then be quite happy to bring Arsenal to the Etihad and beat Arsenal.
Yeah.
And for example, Spurs are not a factor when it comes to City. Spurs aren't. If they get to that sort of final title run, and they've got a very easy run, and I think Spurs is their final tricky game. For example, that's in April. Their last 4 games are Forest, Wolves, Fulham, West Ham. So it's not a ridiculous run, and it's City, but they know how to win. So I think they probably would take a draw this weekend, and because they'll back themselves to not drop any more points to the rest of the league, and I think they'll sit there and say, "Listen, Liverpool, you've done it before. You have dropped that point here and there in the past. So that if you drop one more point, you're out of this."
I think.
It's an interesting one.
I think Klopp and Liverpool have to view this game pretty much like a Champions League knockout game and bring that energy, because you can't, as we've seen in the past, you can't rely on City dropping points. They'll go and win the title and they'll steal it from us 1 point a game. And this is your opportunity. At home, you are in control of their result for the only time now. You can't do anything about Arsenal. You can do something about Liverpool. This is the biggest game, essentially, of the season for Liverpool, unless maybe we get to a Europa League final. But this is literally a final.
Speaking of that, so you got your big match on Sunday. Are we expecting to see quite a young team tomorrow? I assume you will.
Yeah, I think so. Largely, again, I don't think we'll see Mo Salah out. I'm hoping he'll be back this weekend. We're still so injury ridden, and that's what I think is really going to hurt us. I'm just hoping that at least Salah and Darwin are there, and a half decent midfield. Endo and McAllister have been playing really well, and they can just run forever. Kelleher, thank goodness, has also stepped up a lot, because without Alisson, you know how much kind of Liverpool can rely on him. I think what's great, and we spoke about this at the end of the Carabao Cup, is that Liverpool have now, because they did well in that and in the subsequent FA Cup tie last week, they have given so much confidence to those young players that no one knew about a month ago, that they are now them being in a Premier League lineup or Europa League isn't. There's so much belief because they've won a trophy. They were directly responsible for Liverpool winning a trophy. So why can't you go and win an away tie in the Europa League, or why can't you go win a Premier League game? So they've been in higher pressure scenarios already. They've seen the biggest stage in Wembley, 90,000 people. So, and they graduated from that. So it came at that's why we spoke about it, that was crucial, I think, potentially because of how many injuries there are to Liverpool.
But can we talk about your guys next 10 days from tomorrow, basically? because you've got
I mean,
Europa League first leg of round 16 away, City at home on Sunday, then Europa League at home on the Thursday, before then going to Trafford in the FA Cup. I mean, in terms of a season-defining period,
yeah.
you guys lose the next
You
three out of the four.
You lose
You
two
could
of
lose three
those
out of
games.
4 of those games,
Yeah.
and go from potentially being able to win all 4 trophies this season to having to take your one and run.
Yeah, I think everyone
if it goes that badly.
Everyone at Liverpool see one trophy as a loss. I think also every Liverpool fan will throw out the FA Cup and Europa League in a heartbeat if they could guarantee the Premier League. So I still think that's where the focus should be. Again, this is treated like a Champions League knockout match versus City. I think we'll get through Europa. We've been really strong there in Europa this season. It is another trophy that Klopp hasn't won, to be fair, and it would close out the cabinet pretty well.
Europa or FA?
Europa. Because we haven't won it, and we won FA 2 seasons ago. We've won an English Cup competition this year. I think it'll look more glossy. But yeah, very exciting. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to watch, which is wild. I'm going to be in Italy actually in the Dolomites this weekend. So I might have to find some Italian pub and try to convince him to switch off the Napoli game. But I
good luck with that. So
if
Scholtz is not here in a week's time, it's because he successfully found a very Napoli-driven ultra side and said, "Listen, we put the pool game on," and he was drawn and quartered and kind of dangling outside some Italian restaurant.
Or I'm just a Napoli ultra, bro. Maybe I'm a Napoli ultra.
Yeah, or he's been converted, and they said, "Right, cool. You look at me. I'm the captain now. You're now Italian."
Yeah, but no, I'm very excited. I'll have to figure out a way to watch. But cricket, Stevie, two big test matches starting tomorrow.
Yeah, no, listen. So we've got Test cricket at its best. We spoke a little about that 4-day cup, first of all, a big shout out to CSA for making it a 5-day game. I think that needs to be mentioned because I am the staunchest complainee when it comes to the CSA shit show that we all know about, and I've been very vocal about it, and I'm very happy to call them out about it because somebody has to. But one of the nice additions was the fact that having this 4-day cup final, by the way, not just a league. I think I like the idea of a final because there's now a World Test Championship final, so therefore you should implement similar structures. And they made it a 5-day game to get a result, and it turned into a really, really cool game, to go to the 5th day, for example, lunchtime 5th day.
Flows of 5-day cricket. That's right.
It's in terms of preparing for a test match, you couldn't have asked for more. A terrible first session, followed by a horrible second set. I mean, for example, the Lions were completely out of it on day one. They batted terribly and not bowled particularly well at the beginning. Then they came back and sort of got back into the game. Didn't have a phenomenal start, but then all of a sudden, Satepa Reki steps up. Delan Porkington does what he does, and even then, they had to leave it a bit later to start applying through the wickets. So, very, very cool format. Cool to have it on broadcast on TV and have a commentary team and have a bit more attention on it. So it was a cool way to finish a competition. Hopefully we'll see that competition grow and hopefully get some sponsorship and we can start making it actually mean something a bit more. But in terms of some Test cricket, we've got India versus England starting, I think it's tomorrow. And New Zealand versus Australia. New Zealand going down to Australia in that first Test. 172 runs there. It wasn't a particularly amazing performance, but we'll get onto that first. I want to talk about India versus England. It is a dead rubber in inverted commas with regards to the series already being determined, but there's no such thing as a dead rubber in Test cricket. But a big milestone game. Johnny Bairstow is set to reach 100 Test caps, and there's the big question at the moment: is he the worst player to reach 100 Test caps? Which kind of feels like asking who's the worst player in the Springbok World Cup winning squad. If you're going to be if you're going to be the worst of a list of players, the worst player to play 100 Tests is probably not the worst list to be the worst of.
No,
but Dan, where are you sitting on this conversation?
I mean, people have been, throwing a couple names into it, including Mark Boucher, actually, which I think is a little bit wild.
I wondered if he might come up, because the first thing you did when I saw the headlines, I went through the list and I went, right, who's up there? And
Boucher's
again,
got 147 as well, though. Like, you can't now argue with someone who's got that many. You know, you can speak to someone who's maybe scraped by. But to be fair, I think we need to put a little asterisk on every single English player, because if Kagiso Rabada played for England, he would have 200 Test matches, which is why James Anderson is supposing
and 4,000 Test wickets.
I mean, when we'll see the next South African get to 100 Tests, I have no idea. Just because we won't play enough, we played two Tests.
Genuinely, will we see another South African player get to 100 Tests?
And that's saddening, because when you go to these lists, you see the kind of the greatest of the game. So for me, I mean, has Johnny Bairstow ever been a dominant force in Test cricket? Like, for me, the answer is no. Like, even people who are just scraping onto the list with like just over 100 caps, you think of Verinder Sehwag, for example, like quality, Mackay Ntini just getting in there, Chris Gale. People forget how like he was quality Test cricketer for a long time.
333.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think the short answer is probably yes, to be honest. Like, I think he's come in at a time England didn't really have a keeper. Like, after Pryor retired, he was kind of came in. Then they toyed around with Josh Butler for a little bit as keeper. He never really took off on the Test scene. Then he hung around kind of as a batsman, sometimes as a keeper. Now they have Folks in, but with Bazball, he's kind of just, he's really flourished in the ODI format. So under Bazball, he's kind of just been able to be a bully, particularly at home in England. But I mean, I would be shocked if you told, like, naturally I was quite surprised when his name came up in the 100 Test list. As I said, I don't think he's exactly lit up the arena, and he hasn't been in striking form. But as you said, it's still a pretty decent list to be on if people are speaking of you at the bottom of it.
Yeah, look, I don't think I think you're right. I mean, he's not had a phenomenal Test career. He's not. I don't think he's going to remember the Test great, for example, which most of those in the 100 club will be. He's not had a bad Test career. He's currently averaging about 36. He's got just shy of 6,000 Test runs. So nothing to sniff at really.
No, for sure.
But as you said, 176 innings. For example, has had a lot of opportunities. 12 Test hundreds, 26 50s. They don't make for bad reading, but they make for reading of. For example, he's never been their premier batsman.
Yeah.
And you look at the list of players that had 100 Tests, and most of those players were absolute mainstays.
Yeah,
absolutely mainstays in that. I mean, Mark Boucher, for example, we spoke about the fact that his name came up. He was look at how good he was at bailing us out, for example, and he was involved in so many great knocks and Test winning knocks. Your Mackay Ntinis, your Sean Pollocks, you're the absolute greats of the game.
Yeah.
So I think if he'd played for any other nation, he probably wouldn't have got there. He's kind of there by virtue of the fact that England just plays so many Tests that you can get there. He obviously has suited coming and playing
Bazball.
In the sort of the Bazball environment. He's managed to sort of revive his Test career, playing as an out-and-out batsman. But it'll be interesting to see how many more Tests he does play after this. He's 35 this year. And he's such a good white ball player that I'm pretty sure he very, very soon will just turn to that and say, right, I don't need to stuff around with Test matches. I can just go and earn all my bank playing one day in T20 cricket.
Yeah, literally. I mean, like, it's just crazy how much of the circuit you can get around, when particularly just given how much time you need to dedicate yourself to Test cricket and how much England play of it. So I'm the same boat. I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of even calls it a day after this series, especially because he's been struggling. It's not like he's at the top of his game in Tests. But how do you see this game going, Stevie? You mentioned it's a dead rubber, but it's still a lot to take from getting 2 Test wins out in India. Is a massive accomplishment, and yeah, do you think that they have it in them to get that done, or is the writing on the wall?
Short answer is no. I don't think they're going to compete. I think that they had the opportunity last Test to try to get into it and keep it alive, and I think that the fact that they were somewhat in the game at one stage and then sort of let it slip and then got beaten like that at the end. I think it'll be very difficult for them to get themselves up again. If they had gone on to win last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, then obviously the motivation to go out in a decider would have been huge. But I think it'd be very difficult for them to get up after what's been quite a long tour to try and go and win this game. I mean, Stokes say they'll get there, they're up for it, but I'm personally seeing it being a pretty one-sided affair.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I think, to be honest, they seem to be interested when there's something on the line. I somehow think it could be a blowout win for India. I think it could be done in 3 days, to be honest.
I mean, speaking of 100 tests, I think it's Ashwin's 100th test.
Is it? Has he not got to 100 tests yet?
No.
Gee,
They don't put enough in India.
Did he get to 400 or 500 wickets?
400, I think. Well, let's find out, shall we?
I mean, what an absolute beast. But yeah, I think this India team's just too good in India, and they've just so much depth that they're not even choosing to rest Bumrah in a kind of series decided game. That was the last test, and they're still just fine with people coming through. But Australia versus New Zealand, I think New Zealand missed out on a massive opportunity there. So Australia winning by 172 runs. Australia, essentially, their first innings of 383 was the difference. But in that first innings, New Zealand had them 100 and they had them 88 for 3, 176 for 6, and then they just let Cameron Green, who now apparently looks quite comfortable in the number 4, score 174 not out. An insane knock. I mean, the next highest score was 40 from Mitch Marsh. So largely just up to him and his success. But I just feel that there isn't that cutthroatness about this New Zealand team, even letting the South Africa B team really back into a couple of the games, which I was surprised by. It was a really good opportunity to kind of bring it back. I mean, the rest of the innings is no one scored over 200 runs. The next closest was New Zealand's fourth innings of 196. So just stepping off the pedal, and the New Zealand batters not really stepping up.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem. New Zealand batsmen didn't step up. I think they're such a batting orientated side, and that was kind of the whole feature of this series. You've got the best bowling lineup in the world in Australia, with, for me, one of the top batting lineups in the world. But I posted on Twitter, if you want to beat New Zealand, if you listen to the scorecard of Tom Latham 5, Kane Williamson duck, Ravindra duck, Dale Mitchell 11, that's how you beat New Zealand.
Yeah.
Glenn Phillips has been in really good form, and he came through with a 71 in that first innings, for example. Matt Henry contributed towards the end. Yeah. But literally, when you get Williamson, Ravindra, and Mitchell out for a combined 11, that's how you win test matches against New Zealand, because those three at the moment are the difference.
And you think of crucial moments, one being not, I think, putting Australia to the sword when they had an opportunity to potentially bowl them out for much closer, to like in the low 200s. And then you think of that run out of Kane Williamson. I mean, the series that he had versus South Africa was a joke, how many runs he was scoring. And then he goes and runs himself out, against a kind of collision with Will Young's mid-pitch. Quite comical, really. But just that was, big points in the game. And then the rest of the people not really stepping up, and just seems Australia have a bit of the edge over them. So I'm interested what you think is going to happen then tomorrow. And this could be, to be fair, a good segue into our predictions for the week. So let's start with that.
Yeah, no, well, I think, if we're going with this for our prediction, I think New Zealand will come back stronger. I think Kane Williamson doesn't fail many innings in a row. So to go from a duck to a 9, that's 2 failures. So I think Kane Williamson is due a big score. I think Ravindra with that 59, I think will still feel like he's in good touch. So, and I'd like to see what Dale Mitchell does. So I think that those three are, for me, the 3 best batsmen. I think Tom Latham's obviously a great player. Glenn Phillips is in good form. I think a lot of it comes down to the bowlers as well. I think New Zealand need to bowl a lot better. And just try and get through it. Look, I mean, look, they kept Australia down to 164 in the second innings, so that was a bit better. But interesting also to see what the conditions would be like. We used to see very sort of fast green decks over in New Zealand, so the toss will be a big thing to try and get through that first sort of morning session. But I think this Australian bowling lineup is just really, really good.
Yeah,
one of the best bowling lineups of all time. They've got everything that they need. They've got the pace and the sort of the aggressiveness of Stark. You've got the consistency of Pat Cummins. Josh Hazlewood is such a good wicket taker, and then Nathan Lyon, who can just bowl 4,662 overs on the trot.
Seems to get bounced out of
so
nothing.
they've got everything.
Yeah.
I do have a good feeling, though. I'm hoping that New Zealand respond. So I think they'll be a bit more competitive, but I don't see them beating Australia. I think Australia go 2-0.
And what are we talking, runs and wickets?
I think it'll be by about 100-odd runs, by about 4 wickets.
Okay, 100 runs or 4 wickets. Yeah, I think there's going to be... I think this Australian batting lineup shaky. I think it feels a bit like England. I don't think Steve Smith should be opening. Cam Green, obviously a massive knock, but bar that, I don't think their batting is largely underwhelming. And I think New Zealand will correct their errors. So I'm actually going to go for New Zealand win, but I think it's going to be very close because I still think that Australian bowling lineup is phenomenal. I'm a little bit worried about maybe a bit of a hangover from the New Zealand batting lineup. So I'm going to go 50 runs, or 50 runs, and I'll go 3 wickets. But for New Zealand, I do think Australia are favourites. I just think at home, I think New Zealand might just get the better of them. Stevie, let's go into the Six Nations. Your Six Nations prediction then. What are we saying? England versus Ireland.
Well, I think you up first because I'll just get mine there first. So you take it away. What you reckon?
Oh gosh, okay.
Is he going to be brave enough to call it?
No, absolutely not. Ireland win. Ireland. I'm going Ireland by 21.
Okay, I'll go bigger. I think Ireland by 25.
Oh, I was gonna go 25, and I thought it might be too big, but okay. So I'm gonna be a staunch British supporter then this weekend. But I think, it's not unlikely, but I think it'll be in the 20s. So hopefully I'm on the money there. And then lastly, City versus Liverpool at Anfield. Liverpool hosting. What are we saying?
City 2-1. Because you're going to go to Liverpool, so I'm going to go with the result difference here.
Yeah, you see now you're playing on my emotions because I can't let you go. I can't let you take an even more of the lead in the between two fans predictions game. But I think Liverpool are getting the job done. I think 1-0 Liverpool.
1-0.
Yeah. Again, Darwin Núñez, 99th, bro. Getting it. Anfield erupts. He dives into the Kop end, and they start singing prematurely that they won the league. But
there we go.
But yeah, so that's my prediction for the week, and that brings us to the end of the show. Stevie, a lot covered. Will Borthwick and Plumtree have jobs in a couple of weeks' time? We'll have to find out.
Well, Plumtree's lucky because he's got a bit of a break.
If he was going to get sacked,
Borthwick's got 2 more weeks. Yeah, no, exactly. So, but at least the nice thing, and I mean, I love the Six Nations, but it'll be quite nice when the Six Nations comes to a close next weekend, and then we really ramp up the club season. URC followed by Champions Cup, quarters, semis, and then before you know, it's going to be Springbok time. So, very keen to sort of now run into the end of the rugby season and get involved in the big stuff. But well, I suppose we'll be back next week and we'll have to review the predictions. Will Steve go 5-2 up? Will Dan get one back? and we'll have to wait and see. But Dan, enjoy the rest of the week, and good luck for the weekend and your very big game on Sunday. I think we've got Everton or something like that, so we're tussling out here. But yeah, everybody else who's listening, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. If you're on YouTube, then subscribe to the channel as well. The full podcast goes up on Forever Sports, and clips go up on the CVP channel, so that's where you can check the various parts of it. And yeah, we will be back in a week's time. So Dan, enjoy the week, and to everybody else, we'll see you guys all very soon.